I do like this time of year because it is a time of year where I can take notes and realize who I'm going to bring the receipts to by the end of this thing. And, you know, this guy, he gets a lot of people up in a tizzy, and it gets everybody upset with what he says. And listen, you know, I guess you could say his opinion carries a lot of weight because he does, and so does, you know, his credentials in basketball. But there's not a guy in, I think, all of the media circle that I would want to pick against my team than Charles Barkley. So when I see something to the effect of, I'm not a believer in Miami, I believe that if the Nets were to take on Miami in the first round, that they would beat Miami, I laugh. I'm like, good, first of all. I mean, like, there's nobody in this stratosphere that I would like mushing another team more than Charles Barkley. They have a bit basically built against his picks, and knowing that it's a complete jinx. So that's number one. I always take jinx karma going for my team, and in this case against the Nets. The other thing that I just find funny about it is it's just like, for all of these people who aren't sold on Miami, and for whatever the reason has been this year, it's just very strange. You know, it was a funny thing coming into this where everybody thought that Miami was really built to be this playoff team full of veterans and that they were going to really bide their time. You knew that some veterans were probably going to miss games, which ended up happening. And that the playoffs is when they were going to turn it on. Jimmy Butler, playoff player. Kyle Lowry, playoff player. Bam Adebayo, playoff player. Tyler Hero, shown some chops in this playoff series. Obviously, people want to go and they want to defraud what everything Miami has done because it was in a bubble. Even though, you know, we saw what happened last year to all the teams that went to the Final Four the year beforehand, what happened to them in these playoffs. They all broke down physically because it was too quick of a turnaround. The other thing that's funny about it is you have this weird thing with the Los Angeles Lakers, who got eliminated in embarrassing fashion, and LeBron James is calling it not a failure, and they get to hoist the trophy at the end of that. And so good, I guess history is always written. But as you know, a great man said, there's always going to be that asterisk. And I'm always going to remember, not just that it was the bubble, because I don't really care about the bubble. I think the bubble was as pure as it gets. The idea that you had basketball versus basketball, built for shooters, guys got to recover their body, play probably at the best peak condition they probably ever could. And to hear that people mentally couldn't handle it is, I explain that being able to overcome that being a negative thing or being something that should be a detriment. But the thing that's always going to come down to me with this is that they took on a broken Heat team at the end of it. Like Jimmy Butler, Herculean effort to win a couple of games with Kelly Olynyk as the second best player. But I think it's hilarious that we look at this and it's just like, oh yeah, that team just didn't have any of the elements. Yet here they stand with basically the same core three guys, you know, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, and Jimmy Butler. You could add Duncan Robinson to the mix there. The main player who's not in there that was a huge deal, you probably would say, would be Goran Dragic, Jay Crowder. You know, some other, Andre Iguodala had a big game there for an Eastern Conference Finals as well. But these are, you know, I think those are supplanted pieces that you can find. Those main three guys, though, Bam, Jimmy, and Tyler Hero, all are still big mainstays on this team. And the thing that's crazy about it is Tyler Hero at the time was 20. Bam was 22 when this was going down in the bubble. And now they've seasoned up a little bit more. They've matured a little bit more. And it's not like Jimmy Butler is washed. Yeah, he's been banged up with a whole lot of things. But I just think the thing that's funny about it is everybody was going to look to the Lakers and say, well, they were built to be a champion. They were because they have Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And I get you. Look, you want to put Anthony Davis and LeBron James healthy above Bam and Jimmy? Go ahead. I mean, they're sitting at home right now, but go ahead. But everything was the benefit of the doubt of those two guys will get them there no matter the pieces. And yet here stands Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler. Bam and Tyler both being older, more seasoned, better. I should just say better players. And Jimmy Butler being about what he was a couple years ago. And now he stands with a point guard who's physically in a better place and is and maybe even a more dangerous player for this team in Kyle Lowry. The supplanted pieces of, you have the shooting of Duncan Robinson now on the bench with more shooting with Max Strus, And then on top of that, you have PJ Tucker, a good big, and Dwayne Dedmon in the back. And these other ancillary pieces that may come through, whether it be a Victor Oladipo, a Gabe Vincent, a Markieff Morris. All of that stuff being said, it's looked upon like this Heat team that has already basically, with their best 3 players, made a finals run before, are looked upon as some kind of a fluke. Or overlooked as some kind of a regular season team. Like they're the Hawks of a few years ago with Kyle Korver and Al Horford and Paul Millsap. That they are a team that is not built with any stars and any talent. And that is just not the case. And so when I hear things like Charles Barkley come out and say, oh, well, I think the Brooklyn Nets will beat them. Why, Charles? They've been so inconsistent all year. Yeah, they haven't had Kyrie Irving for a lot of that time where he's been out and about doing his thing. Now they will. Kevin Durant is obviously tremendous and one of the best players on the planet, but it's a team that has some serious defensive flaws. And so if we're always going to do the thing where we're going to take the best 2 players in every season, well, how come the MVP doesn't win every year? Nikola Jokic did not advance last year and get to the finals as crowned the best player. Kevin Durant did not last year. Yeah, a little bit more worn down, sure, with the rest of that team, and James Harden now is Philadelphia's problem. But I look at this and I just think it's funny where it's just like everybody's looking for that cute upset and they think it's the Heat because they don't think the Heat has any talent. And I would say to you, that's quite stupid. They have two-way talent. They have talent that is defensive and offensive, and probably in a more elite sense than a lot of other teams in the league. Maybe you want to throw Boston in there, but I would say to this, what's Boston proved? You know, why is Boston, who has given you this good little run here, this last 8-week run, why are they given the benefit of the doubt more so than the Miami Heat? Because of Jason Tatum? Because Jason Tatum and Bam Adebayo squared off in a series, and Bam Adebayo was the best player in that series. So I'm just, I still am flummoxed to see why the Heat don't get the respect they deserve. It's going to be a thing that I'm going to be harping on the entire playoff series, and I feel like we're going to be sitting here in the Eastern Conference Finals going like, I can't believe the Heat are here. Everybody's going to be like, I can't believe it. It's like, really? Well, they were the number 1 team all season in the Eastern Conference. They held that title even with an 0-for-4 run with teams breathing down their neck. Boston couldn't hold the 1 seed for more than 18 hours, not even a full day before the Heat took it back from them, and then never relented, never allowed anybody to get back into their kitchen. It's just strange to me. And the Heat's accomplishments of being the 1 seed somehow scoffed. Like, somebody had to do it in the Eastern Conference. In the best Eastern Conference we have seen in a decade, this Eastern Conference that has been stacked top to bottom, where everybody's saying, I want to avoid an 8th seed, somehow that's being looked upon as, no big deal. Somebody had to do it. That's what it feels like. Milwaukee, we didn't want it. We want to go to Chicago. Boston. Like Boston treated even more like a 1 seed than the Heat are, even though they pooped the bed early on in the season. And the Heat, who were doing this without one of their best players for 20 games, still staying afloat, still staying atop the East, is somehow looked upon as a negative. It's a weird thing that I got to look at when I divulge and digest all of this stuff that's coming in from the media pundits. For example, I look at something like John Hollinger coming out the other day and saying to the fact that Tyler Hero is a chucker who comes off the bench and is my 3rd man for the 6th man of the year. And I'm just looking at myself, okay, and you want to go and you want to say, oh, it's Kevin Love. The Heat were 9 games better than the Cleveland Cavaliers. 9 games better than the Cleveland Cavaliers. And you may say, well, Jared Allen, it really hurt their chances. Well, okay, well, that's adorable. Well, here's the thing. The Heat have had guys in and out of the lineup basically all year between Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo. The guy who's missed the least of that has been Tyler Hero, who has been uplifting the team basically in all those veterans' absence. And so while Kevin Love, who didn't want to be part of Cleveland and was sitting here whining and crying, oh, get me out of here, send me to the Lakers, send me where else, finally gets the gusto, even though he would have been on any other team at the drop of a hat, finally gets the gusto to play the game of basketball and come off the bench and shoot a lot of threes because that's all he can do now. And maybe throw a nice outlet pass every now and then because everybody acts like he's the only person that's ever done that in their life. And somehow that is given more credit by the nerdiest of nerds, the basketball gurus, the guys who invented Purr. This is looked upon as more impressive than what Tyler Hero is doing, where you know that not only he is going into this with a bigger offensive responsibility than Kevin Love, he was the Heat's leading scorer this season. Or was maybe a half a point behind Jimmy Butler, but he played way more games. And so you look at that and you say, wait a minute. So you're going to give it to Kevin Love, who really generally isn't a gimmick role, over Tyler Hero. Now, maybe you want to play semantics and say, well, Tyler Hero isn't really a true role player, isn't a true six man. Maybe you should say something like that, John Hollinger, as your reasoning as why Tyler Hero shouldn't be six man of the year. But six man is six man. He comes off the bench. He is not announced by Mike Biamonte at home games to start the game. He is not there when the flamethrowers are going off. He is a sixth man. He comes out. Now, he is not just the sixth man. He is the man for the Miami Heat. But under the rules of this contest, he is absolutely eligible. And so for the fact for you to have Kevin Love on a team that is in the play-in and him playing some gimmicky role because he could chuck some threes and finally do it at an efficient rate after not playing basketball for the last half decade after LeBron James left Cleveland, and think that that is somehow more impressive than what Tyler Hero has done in his third season in a confined NBA career that has basically felt like it has spanned only 18 months and has turned himself in to the most dynamic player, leading scorer off of the bench for his team efficiently, effectively, and doing it knowing that other people are game planning for him every night. You have a Cavaliers team here that is like, what is Kevin Love? Third on the list of things that people are thinking about on that team, maybe fourth on that team. When you're talking about Darius Garland and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and all the pieces that they've added there on after, Tyler Hero on many nights is the leading man for the Miami Heat. When Jimmy Butler was out and he was hurt and he was down with his tailbone injuries and his ankle injuries and all the toe injuries that he had to deal with. And Bam Adebayo was out with thumb surgery, and Kyle Lowry was out with personal reasons, and all these things that they needed a guy to be the go-to guy and carry the load offensively and be the go-to guy on offense many a nights. Tyler Hero was that man, looked upon like a veteran, and it may be disrespected because people want to go with John Moran or Luka Doncic or Trae Young, and yeah, maybe those guys are putting up flashy numbers and they have their own teams. I'm not saying that he has more of a bearing on those teams than those guys do. Good for them. We know those are the names that he got thrown in there or has thrown himself in there with at the start of the season. But you want to know something? For every test that he has been given and every hater that has come at him and every rumor that he has been dealt with, he has passed it all with flying colors. And I again look at this and say, Tyler Hero's getting somehow jabbed at for being the best chucker on a guard team because they have the best record. Like, he's just along for the ride. Like, he's some kind of Jordan Clarkson from last year, even though everybody was fawning at what Jordan Clarkson was doing last year, fawning at what the Utah Jazz were doing last year. Oh, Jazz, this, Quinn Snyder, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert. Nerds delight, dude. And I don't know if it's because it's in Salt Lake City and people like mountains more than the beach. I can't explain it to you. It's just an anti-Miami thing that we know is a thing. It just can't be explained. Canes, whether it's the Heat, whether it's Tua, I don't know, man. You try and paint the puzzle for me on why it's always this way and always will be. But to find out that people are actually out there trying to spin the narrative that somebody had a better year off the bench than Tyler Hero is laughable. And yet, here we stand. Here we stand knocking on the door of the play-in tournament with the Nets having to play the Cavaliers for the right to even grace the court with a playoff team. And whoever wins tonight, they get to go play the Sully and Murphs. Whoever loses then maybe gets the privilege to go play a game to play the Miami Heat. And yet, somehow, players on those teams are given more credit than the team that has been on top the entire mother bleeping season. So please, Charles Barkley, please tell me how you're not sold on Miami. I would love to know more. In fact, no, I wouldn't, because you told us not to sleep on Lavoy Allen 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when it was Heat and Pacers. You were sitting here scratching your head, trying to figure out, oh, I don't want Miami to win. You know you didn't want Miami to win. You've said many times you didn't want LeBron James to go to Miami. They didn't deserve it down there. So what did you do? You came up with what's the logic I got here? Oh, I know. Lavoy Allen. Don't sleep on him. Don't sleep. Well, maybe it's time for you to wake up, Chuck, and think, this Miami Heat team's pretty damn good. Can't wait for the playoffs.